it does its thing. Here, oh, come on, you. Yeah, I'm gonna have to beat this thing later. This is all there is to it. It's doing its not responding thing. It's doing it's like yeah
You
okay. It's,
recording to the cloud?
no, I'm recording to Twitch. We're gonna be live.
Cool. Hello,
Yeah,
Twitch. My first time on Twitch.
yeah. It doesn't require you to be anything but yourself. But I'm just waiting for the thing to there it goes.
Now, I've done a few of these guys, but never on Twitch.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why I chose Twitch in a second. I'm just letting this thing kind of do. There's that. And we are officially on the air, ladies and gentlemen. So, make a long story short, um, I remember back in the day. So this is how old I am with this system. I remember Windows 95. Now 95, it's not a perfect system by any stretch of the imagination, but it was an easy system to fix. And I remember when my dad, this was when I was a teenager, we got Windows 98 when it first came out, and anyone that got Windows 98 when it first came out regretted it instantly. Instantly regretted it.
No, Windows Millennium. You remember?
No. 98 was worse. 98 was actually worse. I'll tell you how bad 98 was. The first time we put it on the system, it crashed. It no, it 98. I cannot like Millennium is terrible,
That
but
did
it's
not
better
bode
than
well. Yeah.
yeah, right. But 98 was actually worse than Millennium was. Millennium was a fix, not a good fix, but at least it was a fix. So ever since then, there is a natural tendency for me when I look at Windows, whenever it goes to the new operating system, I stay back because every once in a while, right? Every once in a while, um, you get a lemon, like you get a real fucking lemon.
Yep.
I don't think 10 was a lemon, but 11 started as a lemon. 7 was okay, right? So you gotta look at like Windows has basically taught me not to trust it. And I'm a very teachable person in the sense that if I'm going to do something, if I'm going to be like um, if I have to deal with something, I don't like abusive relationships, and as a person that needs a computer operating, right? Windows is kind of an abusive relationship. It's not a great program. Let's be honest. It's kind of shit when you sit there and think about
Better
it.
than DOS.
Oh yeah, it's better than DOS, but that's not like exactly a bar. Like in terms of bars, that's not like the biggest bar in the world. Now, once upon a
No, but I'll
time,
be honest. I tried the Mac system. At one point in my career, I was a visual effects producer. I did Nightmare on Elm Street. I did Dust Till Dawn. I did a bunch of things. So at one point, Mac was ahead of Windows in
oh yeah,
regards to some of the software that was available for the work I had to do, the planning work I had to do, FileMaker Pro, in fact.
yeah.
And so I got myself a Mac laptop and I almost threw it out a window. I could not configure it to get online. This was back in the modem days, but I could not configure it to get online. I could not do the kind of I mean I'm mad nuts. I have folders with subfolders upon subfolders upon subfold. I love the structure I can do with Windows. You
Yeah.
can't do that with anything else. I mean the next best thing I guess would be for me to learn Linux.
Yeah, Linux is decent, but it's like beta. Like wait, I know this is you remember that. I think it's like beta. Everybody knows like beta was the like might have been a better system, but nobody supported it. Like it was just one of those like it's better, but everybody's using
I do
this. And
remember
it's
that actually. Yeah. So I mean Windows is
yeah.
kind of like democracy. It's terrible, but it's the best thing we have.
Uh I had an epiphany about politics about a few weeks ago, and it made me realize something very important, which is this: most of us have become distracted by the "my candidate is better than your candidate" argument. Very
I
few
mean
of
the
us talk.
football game going on with
Yeah, yeah.
politics.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. That's pretty much it. It's a football game. It's not real anymore. Like let's. I've said this. I talked to Susan. Let's be honest. We got two guys. Neither of them should be running. Like, let's be very honest here. They're both too old. Like honestly, neither of them. Like their mental faculties. If it was an elevator, we can debate which floor they're on, but neither of them. Right, right. Well, neither of them can go to the top floor.
I'm going to disagree.
Okay,
I
that's
think
fine.
right now, with how up the world is, I think you need somebody with Biden's level of experience because we are in a boatload of trouble on many fronts. Um, I think that I think that mainstream media, they find him boring, so they're looking for any little thing to hype up. And I don't think you know how old I am.
No, I don't. I don't think I know how old you are, but I also thought you also honestly, you're sharper. Like you're a sharp woman. Like I can let's tell like there's an intelligence there. I'm not. This is just my opinion. Neither of them, I think, have the mental faculties to right now be where they're at.
I
Just
don't know. Dark Brandon gives me a lot of hope.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
Dark
Okay,
Brandon so much.
I have like I said, like even prior to his current was thing, I want in terms of candidates, I'm what I call political atheists. I can look at both of them and criticize both of them for different things. They're both. It's not exactly the bar is low. Even with all that, that's just my opinion. The bar is low, but I think where we like America, honestly, we have two very old men that should not be in presidential positions. We should be the I like just call me crazy. I would like my candidate to be younger than 60. I just in terms
Actually,
of
no, I would disagree there. I think the 60s are actually a really good age. The 60s, that's like prime, prime. Because with
it,
60s, you start to recognize this is not worth getting your panties in a bunch about versus this really needs focus or we're having our leg pulled here. You want a young grandparent, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
well,
Do want that.
yeah, I'm somewhere between late 40s to mid 60s. That is where I would like them. Because the thing about that is, okay, if you're there are advantages to each age there. I'm 42. So I look at the fact that
I'm
I,
20
I look
years
at
older than you.
yeah, okay, gotcha, right? Yeah. So I look at the fact that okay, there are advantages to your age. Definitely. There are disadvantages to your age too. My dad is a little older than you, so I get that I right when you get to your age, the beautiful thing about your age is you really don't give a shit in like the best ways, right? But also the flip side, the other side of the edge there is the other side of the edge. Patience and certain childlike qualities you had when you were younger start bubbling up to the surface again because you don't give a shit that's quite the same way anymore, and I think it's a good thing because you've been around and you've seen it. I think you're more embracive. I think the older you get, the more embracive you are of your flaws, but it also becomes very hard to change the older you get. And I think and also there is this, I think there's a part of, I'm not going to say necessarily that a 40-year-old, a 40, late 40, early 50-year-old is hip, but I also do think there is a little something like they're still parents. They're still seeing what's coming up. There might be just getting into grandparents, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's changing too. I mean,
Sure.
I'm a young grandparent. I have a 3-year-old grandchild,
Oh,
and
yes,
I
yes.
have an incredible relationship with my daughter.
Yeah.
And I am constantly changing and growing. But I think, see, this is where, and this could be a great segue into talking about the book.
Yeah.
I think you'll find that people who are aficionados or creators in the realm of science fiction are more flexible even in later years.
Sure. I know.
Because that's just our the whole milieu. It's the whole thing is about change and evolution and growth and waking up every day and learning new things and not being afraid to say when you're wrong. And
Oh,
it's all part of science fiction.
I actually I don't entirely disagree, but what I am saying is I think what happens when you get to like those years, there is I think there's a tilting point, and this is just my opinion, right? There's a tilting point between I can still do certain things, and do them well, right? To like, struggling again. I'm watching. My dad's is 68, and I watch him sometimes, right? So, like, still incredibly sharp mind because of what he does, but I also noticed that certain qualities that weren't maybe necessarily his best qualities, they're starting to bubble to the surface a little bit easier. I saw this even with my mom. My mom's a little younger. My mom's the same way. And I think that's just part of, I think it is part of the process. But I do think there's a certain point with that that's like, I'm not necessarily think you should be in charge. I'm not saying that you don't have the you're still a grown adult. You
I'd
still,
argue the same for you.
oh, hey, no, and that's the thing. Like, that's part of the, that is part of the thing. Like, I'm 42. I'm on my way to being a supervillain.
I don't think somebody who's 80 years old and is having brain aphasia, mini strokes, while trying to present information to the press about a particular party's position and is repeatedly having these little aphasias should be in a position of power.
Yeah,
I can totally agree with that. I would tell you that for me, I feel that the older I get, the less rigid I am getting,
no,
the more I'm comfortable with trying different things because I have a better sense of who I am, and I have less fear of losing that, and I can try, but I was brought up in very special circumstances. My father was very much about try everything once,
mhm.
and I was just brought up in a very modern, very science fiction heavy house. But I mean, I look at science fiction writers in their 70s and 80s who write essays who they're incredibly thoughtful and provocative and mind expansive. And I think some of that is from experience that you get that. I don't, I think that there is a significant difference for each and every individual. Should we have like that you have to take a test, I mean, that didn't work because you have the former whatever he is, he was going around saying man, child, chair, kid, I mean, it's as if that's the goldenrod for having your brain and being able
Well,
to use said brain.
I I I I again, I think again, I don't want to, again, I have seen incredibly, I have one of my grandmother's friends. She was 96 years old. She was doing charity. She was still physically active until to her 101st birthday, right? Mentally very
101st.
sharp. 101st. That's how long she lived. No, that's how long she lived. Right? Very, no, there is something to be said. There is something to be said. I think one of the things I realized about as I've gotten older, like I'm trying to move into a more creative field by myself and not work for people anymore. Right? And I'm going through the ups and downs that are
I
coming
get
with it,
it.
right? Right? But one of the reasons why, like one of the big reasons why, is I realize like one of the I think most horrible things that happens to people is when they work a regular day job. A lot of them when they retire, they've been doing this for so long, they don't know how to shift. And I've seen
Right.
that too. And I've seen that too.
You're right.
So
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, my set of circumstances are very unique,
yeah.
but you're right. It's that rigidity, that being under those artificial lights.
But it's just the fact, the repetition, right? It's just you get so used to it, you don't realize how much your day job can regiment you until you walk away from it, right? So I say all that, right, to say that I think very much that you can be intelligent, sharp, witty, again, all the way to 101. I've seen it, right? But I also think it takes a certain self-awareness to do it, right? And if you don't have it, if it's not there, as you get older, it gets easier to lose yourself. The
But I
fact
would argue I know 20 and 30-year-olds who are
absolutely.
rigid and
Oh,
uneducated and don't want to expand their minds. And
oh,
it's
absolutely.
criminal. It's criminal.
no. Again, and to say that age is the only barrier to this would be disingenuous on my part. I'm going to agree with you there. What I will say, and this is the only thing I will say, I think when you're younger, I can still change. I am conscious of what I need to change, but I would say it was easier for me to change and adapt and go when I was in my 20s, right? Now, I'm more comfortable with who I am now than I was in my 20s, right? And I think there's a trade-off there, but also, again, I'm aware of this. I'm aware of my own bullshit. It's like, okay, I got to work on this or else, right? I think there is something to be said about that. So I think there's some trade-offs with each era of your life. So you gotta kind of be aware what they are. So I want to, by the time I'm your age, right? I'm still gonna be doing crazy shit. I'm probably gonna have that obnoxious red cape. I'll have someone to hire to carry it because it'll be that obnoxious. Be my like that secret supervillain I've always wanted to be, right? But that all said, right? That all said, I realize like this comes down to my approach to life, how I adapt in the next 10, 20 years, a little luck in terms of health, a little luck there too. But beyond all that, if I can maintain the faculty, the passion, the drive, there's no reason why I can't go into my 80s, 90s, maybe even, who knows, hundreds, God willing, right? And still be acting. I don't know if I want to see 110. Like I'm just being honest there. I don't know if I want to live that long, but the idea that I'm going to be this vegetable on a couch, like I'm not going to do that.
That's,
I'm
you
going to
know what, that right there is it. You
yeah,
want to know the
right.
secret? You want to know the real secret?
Hmm.
Walking every day.
Hmm.
That's the secret. I'm telling you, I walk at least 5 miles a day.
Yeah.
At least five. Okay. When my mom, 3 or 4 years ago, we had to find a facility to put her in. And I got to talk to a lot of people in their 90s.
Hmm.
And the ones that were really like with it, that you couldn't tell they were in their 90s, were the
Hmm.
ones who were still walking 1 to 2 miles a day.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
proven that walking just, it does something to the whole brain, as far as the endorphins, but also the brain and how it functions and the reminder of how to use the body. So that's a silver bullet.
Yeah.
Walk every day, no matter what. I have to. I have this giant golden doodle. I gotta walk him every day.
Okay.
And yeah, we just had a walk in the woods before your
Before
thing.
come and say hi
So
to me. Yes.
and I definitely think walking does more for me than anything else.
No, I
And
walk all the time. I still walk all the time. I still enjoy it. It's kind of like my Zen state when I'm being creative, right? It's like I need to go out. Like I at this point in my life, I love being on the keyboard, but I also hate it too because I'm on it a lot. So I make a point to get off it for points of the day just because I need the sanity, right? So
yeah,
I walk. I walk a lot. I'd like to do a little bit more, but like I said, I'm still going through the ups and downs of establishing like making a living as a creative, and so I'm in a down moment right this minute. But like I said, it could go up, and you know this probably better than I do. You can go up as one simple yes in the right spot. So that's
it
kind of
gets
where I'm at.
harder when you have a lot on your plate creatively,
Yeah.
but conversely, like taking an hour to
Mhm.
go for a walk and then come back and just like read for a little bit, eat a good lunch, you'll actually be able to work longer into the afternoon, evening because you took the break.
Absolutely.
And that takes wisdom to recognize that, because when you're young, you just want to go, 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 go. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I loved pulling all nighters. There's a part of me that would love to pull an all nighter because there's some magic to the all nighter. Let's,
There is.
admit it. There just is this magic to the 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning,
I still work till
third
that late.
wind.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
just, it's so cool. It's incredibly cool. But I mean, our civilization right now is reaching a wall. It's hitting a wall where we're having to redefine how to take care of ourselves because nobody else is going to do it for us.
Oh, it's okay. yeah, we won't. We'll save the commentary on your medical system for another day. That is one of the most criminal things I've ever seen in my
Oh,
life.
you have no idea.
Actually, I do. My dad's a naturopath. I've used this. I lived in the States. The biggest thing I will tell you, and the biggest thing um, my dad was a naturopath. So one of his things was, he was on Canada's side of the creek in Windsor, Ontario, near Detroit. So he'd get people from both sides of the creek. I remember when the opioid thing was happening, and people were coming to him addicted to the shit. So I mean, it was like a lot of people don't like having this. Like the reality of the medical system in your country is it's a profit first industry
Yep.
with everything,
Yep.
right? Everything, and whether to some degree, whether you want to admit it or not, that's everything from the surgeries to the vaccines and
Yep.
everything in the middle. That is reality,
You can't even
and
trust the doctors because it's a question of, do I really need this procedure the doctor wants me to have, or are they just trying to make a buck?
That's right, that's the real I know how criminal your system is. I really do, and the fact of the matter is, I'm in Canada. We have pieces of your system in us too. It's just we do it a little differently, but there is always you always have to look at any information you're given from the point of view. The very first thing you have to ask, and this is sad but it's the truth,
Chink,
the
chink.
Kaching kaching, or I was going to say que bono, who benefits, right? Because that is a very and that is a very sad commentary on things. But I've seen too much, and that's just the way it is. I've just seen it firsthand. What can happen when a doctor damages a patient? When you see it, when it right, and a lot of times the patient doesn't even realize it, and that's the really scary. That's the terrifying part of today. Is again from it's I'm very test conscious with a lot of stuff, but like I said, in the last 20 years especially, things aren't tested like they used to be, and that comes with a lot of
Yep.
that comes with a lot of like that's the thing, like people don't talk about this because people don't realize that impact. Like it's one of those things. Like I'm looking up when I look up health stuff, I look up old school stuff from like the 80s earlier. Not
Mhm.
because I think necessarily it's the most up to date information in the world anymore, but it's also there's a lot less for profit shit there. So it may not be a
True.
perfect picture, right? But it gives me an idea. It's like, okay, this worked back in the day. Does it still work?
But
Right?
there are instances where you do need, I mean,
Sure.
I know it's very dangerous to talk about like the COVID vaccine, okay? I'm a unicorn. I've never gotten COVID. I
Mm,
am very up to date on the vaccines, and I attribute that to why I have not got COVID. Okay, but two more important examples that I'll give you that are not somewhat non-political, that are, thank God for recent developments, and one is MS. I have
mhm,
MS.
mhm.
And if I had gotten MS 20 years ago, I still see people with the reaction if it's a death sentence. It's not a death sentence
No.
anymore. There
No.
is there are drugs now like Ocrevus, for instance, that truly arrest the development of lesions. So, you go in every 6 months, you get the infusion. I can't believe how much it costs if you don't have the insurance, but you get it and
Mhm.
then you're fine. I mean, there are people that go on for decades with it. Now, conversely, I will tell you, in the Canadian system, because I am part of several MS Society
Mhm.
forums, first off, for some reason, Canada has the highest amount per capita of people with MS in the Western world.
Mhm.
But secondly, the Vancouver province,
British Columbia. Yes.
right, they have the least amount being approved to use a crevice, even though it's probably the wealthiest
it,
province.
it is not the wealthiest province. Where I'm at it's Alberta, but no. Here's the again. This is something. This is somewhat this is somewhat this has been politicized. But this is something I think a lot of people have to understand. Again, seeing what I've seen, I understand a very big reluctance to trust any medicine. I understand it. I'm not saying you're not right that there are definitely some things that aren't beneficial, but and this is the reality of the medical industry. They've done themselves a big disservice with how they handle a lot of things. It is, I would dare say at this point, it is natural to be distrusting of them, and you probably should a little bit, because if you're not, as we talked about earlier, who the fuck knows what they're going to recommend you to do? And that becomes a very, tricky line, right? Right. You know, I look at things like, if someone makes a decision not to do something, I don't say they're anti anything anymore, because I've just seen myself. Their own history might tell them, hey, maybe they shouldn't. So, as far as what you're talking about with MS, every country kind of has, it's kind of weird, because if you look at it from like a worldwide standpoint, you'll find that certain drugs that are approved in some spots for some reasons are not approved in other spots. And there are reasons for it. Sometimes there are logical reasons. Sometimes you just go shrug, like you don't understand it, right? There are politics even in what is and isn't improved. It's also and this is part of the downside too, what insurance companies say in each country as well will dictate
Yeah, but
a
you're supposed
doctor.
to have socialized medicine up there. So why is
Oh
it
well, yeah,
that people in
it's
Vancouver can't get it?
but that's the thing. Like we do, it's like we do, but we don't. Right? We do, but we don't. Our system is a little like yours as well. Like, yes, we don't go to get, like, if we have to go to get a surgery, we're not paying what you guys are paying. Thank, by and large, thank God. Right? Like that's the good part. The bad part is, much like your system, insurance companies dictate what doctors prescribed up here, just like they do down there. So that comes with
It's too bad.
that's reality. That is the reality of it, right? So, um, that's the thing about it. Like, again, it's that's the so we have pieces of your system in us. We kind of have to. We're your neighbor, and kind of what you guys say, and a lot of things goes because you got the money, and right, that is
And
just,
yet, one of my prescriptions, if I
yeah,
use my insurance, it would cost $900 a month versus by my getting it through Canada, it costs me
yeah,
30
exactly.
bucks a month.
And that's the thing. Like, we
Same
don't pay.
exact thing.
Yeah, no. I'm not. Again, that's where you guys get really ramrodded.
Screwed with our
Yeah,
pants on.
yeah. No. You get ramrodded. Like if I get injured somewhere, like, I would rather get treated in Canada, because I'm not gonna. It's not gonna cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars for a surgery that is
It's a
free, or
nightmare.
yeah, right. So, but we still have, again, what we choose to take is dictated by, like, what a lot of our medicines, even though we don't pay what you pay, are dictated by a lot of the same things you guys are dictated by
I
too.
did not know that. I assumed, like, I have a very good friend who lives in Australia.
Yep.
I'm actually in the midst of doing some business
Yeah.
with Australia for a couple of television series I created. Um,
Congrats.
anyway, she had something go wrong with her, and I won't go into the gruesome
No.
details.
Yeah, that's fine.
She had to stay bedridden for like 6 weeks waiting for her turn to get taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
In bed. Now, fortunately, her child was grown and she had her husband and her child at home to take care of the homestead and all that. But what about somebody who had a little kid and they're being told they have to wait 6 weeks and just stay in bed?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's awful.
Yeah, and that's a big thing up here too. Like, we have that issue. We have some of those issues too. But the other part of that, though, and this is the flip side, we overwork and underpay our nurses and staff. That's why a lot of them end
Oh,
up going
that's
to
here too. That's very true here. It's
you.
criminally true.
You pay more than we do. Like that, yeah. Oh, no. Like, you will find that a lot of Canadian nurses and stuff will get like $10,000 bonuses to come to the States, and some of them will take it, right? Like people, again. It's it. I think everybody's underpaid, if to be perfectly honest with you. It's not just doctors and nurses, but it is very apparent like
Yeah,
when you
except for like the CEOs of companies. Maybe they're
yeah,
not
yeah,
underpaid.
yeah. But but even who knows? Sometimes I think about being in charge of something like Amazon. I can just imagine some of the headaches that would come with that. It's like, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt there. Whatever. At this point, I don't fault anybody getting paid anything like, in this world. But I look at it like everybody's criminally underpaid. But I would argue the only people that are probably more underpaid than doctors and nurses are arguably teachers. Because I mean, yeah,
Yes.
right. I
Yes.
mean, but the truth is, everybody's underpaid, and that is the reality of the world today. And so, what happens is you look again. I have seen it. I have seen with people here. I'm not gonna name names. I know somebody. She still works part time at a comic shop, right? And she's finally becoming a nurse full time. She spent 2 years being like a part time nurse because of the burnout and the right. So I remember when I first saw her, she was like that they're trying to make me do it. It's like you don't have to do it if you don't want to. I mean, you're always going to be in demand. So I mean, you can set your schedule, and she did that for until she found what she wanted to do in the industry, which I think was a really smart thing.
That is smart.
Um, right, but again, a lot of them get pushed into it. They go through a meat grinder and they burn out. It's
Yep.
not an easy. It is not an easy job, and here more so even than in the States, they're underpaid big time.
I had
Right?
no idea.
Yeah, yeah,
'Cause it's bad down here. It's quite
yeah.
bad. But
y-
you're right
y-
about teachers, and honestly, uh, as I was a professor. I'm now an adjunct. Oops, sorry, hold on.
No worries.
I was a
We're-
professor. I'm now an adjunct. It's disgusting how little outside of the Ivy Leagues, how little you're paid. I mean, it's bad.
yeah.
It's really bad. Education is everything, but it's not treated that way, and I don't know the answer.
Well, I think honestly we're coming to a point where we got I like I'm not gonna go like into the political leadership thing. I'm gonna like one of the big issues. Like one of the big issues going on right now is people are looking to walk away from this. Why would you want to be part of a system that does not value you in any way, shape, or form, right? And that's kind of like the big. If I were to make like the biggest two problems, I think, if you were to sum up in a wonderful nutshell, is there's too little integrity and transparency at the very top, which is probably number one. But number two, the second most valuable thing is nobody is valued anymore. Everybody's like this cog in a wheel that they think that can be replaced. And this has been this way for a very long time. But what's happened now is guys like me, people like yourself are like, well, you know what? I don't have to do it this way anymore,
Right.
and I'm looking to leave. So the big like I look at the idea of decentralization. Like, okay, where are you exactly, if you don't mind my asking?
I'm outside of Ann Arbor area, but
Okay,
I'm not from Michigan. I'm from
no.
New York.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
from New York
I can
City.
definitely I can definitely hear it. Okay, so my grandmother's in Detroit, so like I'm not too like my family's not too far from you, but Ann Arbor, and if I were to live in Michigan again, it would be Ann Arbor. It'd be the only city I think I could tolerate. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Um, but what I would say is the idea that you and I are having this conversation right now is honestly an incredible thing. We can kind of to some degree today kind of choose our community and our living space.
Yeah,
So there
it
is
is
a whole
incredible.
right. We can choose it, and so I think that's the great freedom right now. So I think the big question going into the next whatever's coming next, okay, is are we going to keep going along with it as things are going, or are we going to say, you know what, I'm going to create my own, whatever that looks like. I think inevitably we're going to go to I'm going to create my own whatever it looks like, right? How we get there, I think is the real question. I don't have a full clear answer. We might go back to like a Tower of Babel scenario before we crash and burn again. I don't know. Maybe we all just decide, hey, you know what? Let's just hang out and sing Kumbaya somewhere. I don't know. I don't pretend I have an answer of the path there. What I do know is the tools exist today that all of us have a lot more ability to make things happen. And in terms of communication, in terms of creating stuff, the tools are there. So where that means and where that goes, I think a lot of it is up to us. But again, going back to something I said earlier, the rigidness of how we've been for so long, right? I don't know if everyone fully realizes, hey, I don't have to cooperate with this the same way anymore. I can
That's
do
why
my
I left
own.
the film industry. I was
Yeah,
tired of making other people money.
yeah,
Um, my husband and I met online. We were like one of those first couples.
yeah.
We met 30 years ago
Oh wow.
online, back in the, you know, in fact, our wedding, one of our wedding presents was a copy of Windows 95 and some jam. I'm telling you the truth, man. It was my brother-in-law who gave us Windows 95.
That's awesome.
But we met online, and I was in LA doing I was doing a film for Disney, and then I was the visual effects producer and visual effects director on Dust Till Dawn. So I was going, bopping around, and my husband was at the time in England working for developing a power plant. And we met online and we conversed for about 9 months. We finally met after about 5 or 6 months, and we got married. We've been married 29 and a half years.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Like that's a feat too in today's world. Like
But
that,
in
that
today's world, because of Skype and because of FaceTime, and I mean, my granddaughter, who's 3 and a half and is in New York City, and I'm out in Michigan, my granddaughter calls me every morning on FaceTime at 7:30 in the morning. She wants to talk to me as she's getting ready to go to school. Every morning. It's ten
that's awesome.
15 minutes. It's awesome. It's fantastic. And we're able to be in each other's lives, even though we are hundreds of miles away. I have friends all over the planet. I have friends in Australia. I have friends in Canada. I have friends in Europe, friends throughout the Americas. I have friends in Africa. And because of all this technology, I can talk to them without breaking bank.
Yeah, and that's an incredible thing, right?
Yep.
So
And you
that's an
can
incredible.
even, in this day and age, just to show you how abnormal I am, I can even meet with them on here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love VR. I
Eh,
worked on Lawnmower Man.
oh, very cool.
Right. So
Very,
yeah,
very.
so like VR has always been something, the hologram tech, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. No,
yeah, and I think that's our next big thing is really getting there. So
I,
I know the
I,
Apple Vision sucks, but we'll get there.
yeah, I don't know if we're gonna get there anytime soon. But it's not as easy a jump as they were hoping it would be, and maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I'm at that point again. I think the thing is with technology and stuff, it goes in so like it's like you go on. This is going to sound very counterintuitive because I know how toxic social media is. But one of the cool things about Twitter, if you decide to use it this way, I know this is going to terrify you for a second. You can actually look at current events. Like ignore you guys said it a certain way, but you can ignore current events and you can watch things unfold in real time everywhere without like any big story. They're on there somehow, some way, somehow, right? So you just gotta you have again,
But
you have
they're
to find.
not, Josh. They're being controlled. Many countries are censoring who
Sure.
can post on X, formerly known as Twitter. I have a friend who that was her PhD from Rice University, her computer science PhD, was on how a lot of third world countries are controlling what's coming out. So what you're seeing is not the truth. And now you have somebody who owns Twitter who is further manipulating the truth. So that's not really what's going on. And that's, I think, the biggest problem of all is that we have all come to believe that social media is the truth and it's what's really going on out there. We are all being so massively manipulated by bots on the left and bots on the right and controlling countries and controlling billionaires. We wouldn't even know what the truth looked like if it stared us in the eye.
Or a lot of us would just run from the truth.
Yeah, that too. I mean,
Well, no,
that's, there's that whole joke too. Absolutely.
no, because it's not a joke. Like you tell someone the truth, like you show someone something, and if it goes, so the pandemic, I have 12 rules to success. The ninth rule is detach from all outcomes, and the idea
But detachment and what?
detach from all outcomes. So the idea is this, okay? So human beings, as a general rule of thumb, we all obsess over stuff. It's why we learn and grow because we become fascinated with something and we learn. The flip side to it though is if we aren't careful, the ideas we buy into, going to something you're just saying here, the ideas we buy into, depending on what we buy into, if we it can become so ingrained in us. It's 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 okay, Mr. Dog. I concur entirely. But the thing is, the
It's
idea
okay.
is so if I okay, just for sake of argument, look okay, I could say upside the sky is blue, but let's just say I become for some reason convinced that the sky is fuchsia, pure unadulterated
Or maybe
fuchsia.
you're colorblind and you don't even know it.
Well, that's possible. That is entirely a possibility. But I'm going to go from this perspective, right? That I just firmly believe it.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not that's actually true is irrelevant. If if you go now and if I completely buy into the idea, if you challenge my idea, it feels like an attack on me. And right, and this is I'm even using the sky as blue, but this is why I think politics in particular has become so polarized. We embrace the idea of what we think those particular leaders represent. More so whether they are or aren't is irrelevant. It's just the ideas we embrace. So that's why people get into a fight over this, and it becomes a bullheaded contest. So recognizing that, I realized that you have to detach from all outcomes. And what that means is I have to separate my ideas from the truth to the best of my ability. I'm always going to have biases. I'm always going to have my own perspective of things, and I understand that.
I'm a
But
reference.
right, I understand that. But what I can do is like, okay, I can have a debate with you about something we fundamentally disagree with, right? And I'm not going to take it personally because it to me it's like we just disagree. It's not a big deal. But also I can learn because if you see something a certain way that maybe I've never considered and I've seen something a certain way that maybe you've never considered, right? If I'm detached from the outcome, I can at least listen even if my mind doesn't change, right? And
It's very
that's
Vulcan of you.
it's very no, it's something that it's something I think that's necessary, something you just pointed out. It's not just Twitter or X. It's Facebook. It's YouTube. It's any of these
Reddit.
things. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So the thing you got to keep in mind is okay. Ironically, going back to the computer programs here, the computer is literally a window to the world. It's just a window. It's not the real
Literally.
world. The real world is wherever you see and hear and do. So you got to keep this in mind when you deal with people is that they have their own ideas of how the world works. And in this day and age, in this day and age, you got to kind of go, okay, where are you coming from? But you have to have that moment of like, okay, because if you don't have it, you're always gonna be blind to what they're seeing. Now, sometimes what they're seeing may be like, okay, I can't like that's future thing. I have no idea where you're seeing that from, bud, and I'm gonna have to just accept that you see it and I don't. But I find that when you do it that way, you're not gonna hate somebody who disagrees with you, and you're not gonna feel so affronted when your own ideas are attacked. Right, and I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Um, like I said, whatever, regardless of what you may think about the vaccine, yay or nay, there was definitely there's definitely a lot of propaganda during that whole era, and it was just like, you know what, I'm not going to be so quick to trust next time around, and I'm going to take that bias my own biases, my own perspectives, I'm going to put it to the side, and I'm going to just try to look at things as honestly as I can, and that's it. And
Well, you have to think about who that propaganda is coming from. You have to recognize that
mhm,
there are agendas driven at destroying Western civilization. It
yep,
does exist. They have been quoted. I mean, Khrushchev said it that he doesn't need to use weapons to destroy the United States from within. He said these things.
sure,
They want the end of us. They do. And you have to balance that leadership position with the fact that the people are people like us that are incredible to share with. I mean, I have Russian friends. I've had Muslim friends. I've had friends of many different walks. They don't get to make these horrific decisions that mess everything up. They're just trying to live their lives.
that's 90% of people worldwide. Like that, honestly, that's
Probably
90.
more like 99%.
I always factor in that there's probably a percentage of people that want to watch the world burn. There's always an asshole
Yes,
somewhere.
there is.
Right, but I mean, there's always an asshole somewhere too, right? So I say
Right.
9 out of 10, but 9 out of 10 is still a significant majority. I just think the honest answer is you got to kind of like look at it like, okay, one, something I said earlier. Okay, I gotta keep an open mind, especially in this day and age, because how I see things. I mean, someone told me that these things were this way. That doesn't necessarily mean they always will be this way. I know. Now I'm not just done Vulcan. I've done
Okay,
Nietzsche.
so what about flat earthers?
Okay. So again, where does that come from? That okay? No. And I say it like this. Okay.
I think it's
Yes.
hilarious.
Oh no. No. It is. No. I agree with you. But where that comes from, like again, going to something I said earlier, it comes from the fact that at this particular point in time, there's no trust. There's no trust on the top. Yes, it seems hilarious when you look at it from like the
That's the
purely
problem.
purely like science, like shadows kind of shoot that down like big time. But that all said, the idea that hey, I don't know what's real anymore and I don't know what to trust is a very real thing. And I think when you look at anything, any conspiracy for that matter, actually, okay, you can look at it and go, okay, it's coming from this space. And the reality is, as long as I hate the whole misinformation thing, and I'm going to tell you why I hate it, because I think the best, and because it's the same problem. Free speech is the best way to kill a crazy idea. Me and you having a discussion, even disagreeing on stuff, is a good way to get the ideas out in the open. And by getting an idea out in the open, you can actually kind of almost expose again. You expose how great the idea, and it's the best way to overcome it. The whole idea of bottling up things that aren't true. The reality, the thing, the psychology, the flaw is the psychology of it. Why is that not true? Why is this one thing um, misinformation, and why is this thing not? Right? Because that again, there's a natural distrust to authority that's been earned. So, and the reason, and so by making things more, even more foggy, not less transparent, you actually are increasing the likelihood of people believing whatever it is that they're going to believe. The only way to deal with a terrible idea is talk about them. That has always, as flat Earth might
Right. So
seem like,
Twitter is notorious for shutting down free speech.
so is Facebook. I
Oh,
got, yeah, right. So is
Facebook.
Facebook.
Facebook is just, Facebook is where people go to humble brag and tease each other.
I got a warning for using the word crackers as in rich crackers. Yeah, on Facebook. So this is where me and you. I'm going to tell you straight up. Tell you straight up. No. Like it's not just Twitter. It's Facebook.
Oh, I know it's not just Twitter. In fact, I'm curious because I posted something and I wanted to see, oh, it's still up. I wonder if anyone's seen. Oh no, it's getting some likes. So I don't know if you're familiar with the fact that the latest round of Hugo Awards has happened in China, and
Yes.
that you're aware of what China has done, where they have excluded several science fiction authors from the awards because they were not pro-communist China.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
So I had posted something about this on Facebook, and I have seen Facebook deliberately dial back on some of my posts and other people's posts.
Hmm.
Same with Instagram when they don't like the topic.
Absolutely. No, like I said, and I don't think, like, again, like going back to like the whole thing, flat Earth or the Hugers, like talking about these ideas openly is the best way to dispel them. I truly believe that, and the fact that, again, the approaches that the tech companies are making is, I think, a huge mistake, because of what
Yes.
it's not making people trust things more. It's going to make
Okay,
people,
except for let's talk about hate speech.
if you're talking about if you're talking about extremes, sure,
Like
but
gas all the Jews. Let's talk about gas all the Jews for a
yeah,
moment,
no,
shall we?
no, but the problem, but the thing is, it's not uniform. Like, if I wanted to look up really hate speech on Twitter or Facebook, and I want to find some of the most vile shit on earth, it's there, right? There's not a universal. There's not a
No, they're
universal.
absolutely. They are
Yeah,
not being consistent. They're not
no,
being consistent.
and that's the thing. Like,
I
that's the
agree.
issue, right? Right, that's the issue. If they were consistent, no one would bitch, right? No one would bitch. They're not, and that's the other major issue, right? So I'm looking at it. So you got to, because again, it creates this question: why is this being hit and this is not? Right? You have to you
Yeah, I'll give you
if
the
you're
perfect example of that. Post
yeah.
October 7th, you had people in Boston at my alma mater, Boston University, posting pictures of the hostages saying bring them home. And then you had other people ripping down those posters, taking away that freedom of speech.
Mhm.
And their act of ripping down was considered an act of freedom of speech.
Yeah, so yeah, you have to, like I said, I think most of us would agree, like, about like no to bigotry, but you have to, at that point. Now, again, I'm not expecting a perfect system, but I think it's not unreasonable to expect a consistent one.
I think you're right. I think
Yeah,
that's the problem is it's not consistent. It's just like if it was gas all the blacks, there's no way that would be allowed, but
yeah,
gas all the Jews is allowed. Why?
yeah.
Why is that allowed? That
Well,
should not be allowed.
yeah, yeah, no, and I say this as I say this like I'm watching, like, by the way, I did not expect us to be like this heady as a conversation. Just, but it's okay.
Fun,
No, no,
fun
totally.
on a Friday afternoon, right?
Yeah, yeah, or Friday. Oh, well, not, yeah. I just turned afternoon over here. I'm in Alberta, so we're 2 hours. Yeah, but what I'm saying is, right, is we live in a time. We live in a time, like, the big, again, this is why I said the ultimate problem is integrity and transparency. Because if you have a consistent system, it's fair, right? It's fair,
Right.
and everybody, again, we might not get
You
hundred
have
percent of what
right.
we want, but there'd be a lot less. There would be less flat Earth. There would be less conspiracy. There would be
Consistent
less.
rules of the game, whatever the game may be.
Yeah, exactly. That is a huge thing, and and again, it's one of those things where I look at it and go, okay, so I can't fault. Again, it's one of those things, like, I can't fault anybody now, because if there is no clear consistency,
Yep.
then what the fuck? You know
Yep.
what I
No,
mean?
you're absolutely right. I
Yeah, yeah,
exactly. That's
yeah,
exactly it. It's there are the rules, the goalpost keeps shifting, the
yeah,
rules keep shifting. What works for the gander should work for the goose. It's all of those old cliches.
yeah.
It's not what's happening. And
No.
so we are just a step away from chaos because the rules are inconsistent.
Yeah, and you could fix it tomorrow. You could like, I wouldn't say it wouldn't be exactly tomorrow, but you would go a long way. Again, how do you kill conspiracy theories? Consistency. How do you kill flat Earth? Consistency. But that's also being very honest with some of the problems in our like, going like the real deep problems in the system. That means being honest with those problems. And going back to something I said earlier, there's a K Bono aspect of it. Someone benefits from it.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. I look at right now what's going on with the whole Palestine Israel thing right now. That's a mess. I don't really, like, there's no, there's no nice way of looking at that. It's a mess.
Yeah,
I
because
don't.
I mean, if it happened here in the
Yeah.
United States, if Mexican cartels had come up and killed all those people,
Oh
we
yeah.
would have flatland,
Oh no.
bombed, blown away all of the border
Yeah.
towns south of the border. We would have done it, and nobody would have thought anything about it. And that wouldn't have been good either,
No,
because you
no,
have all of these
no.
innocent lives caught up, but it would have been done.
It's, but I mean, what makes it a real what makes it a real mess, what makes it a real mess is like the Israeli prime minister was doing some stuff too, and you're just looking at that going, okay, this is a mess. And like it was Israel's 9/11. I think a lot of people don't realize that.
No, that's exactly what it was.
Right, it was Israel's 9/11.
Yes.
Right. So, and if you look at how U.S. responded to Afghanistan initially, before somehow we ended up in Iraq, that's another conversation for another day. But um, that was the reaction. And so I'm not saying, and again, I'm not saying I'm all for, I'm all for bombing the city of Hamas to the ground, because not the Hamas, the Gaza Strip to the ground either. I don't know if that was, considering what was going on with some of the political behind the scenes. I'm not sure that was, I'm not sure that was necessarily the way to go about doing it. But I also can't fault anyone for feeling what they felt after what was initially released either. So I'm in this like weird, like, this is just a mess, and I don't have a good, like, easy 100% good clean whole solution here. I
But
don't.
it
And
was obvious when it happened that it was
yeah,
going to be a disproportional response.
yeah,
It was their 9/11. That's exactly what I said on that day, is that this was
yeah, yeah,
Israel's
yeah.
9/11, and it's going to be disproportional. And
Yeah. That
you know,
and
the
again, I
problem,
don't.
it's a mess.
Yeah,
It's
no,
just a mess.
it's like I said, it's not clean, because honestly, it's not a clean and happy and healthy thing. There's no, like, again, I don't necessarily think going in there and doing what they're doing is necessarily correct either, considering where some of the Hamas leaders are. That's weird to me. But at the same time, right? Again, I can't necessarily, again, if I'm being consistent, the U.S. did something similar to Afghanistan. What am I?
Yes,
What am I? What am?
yes,
What am I? What am I supposed to say? Right.
yes.
So that, again, that's the shitty part about being consistent sometimes too. Is sometimes you gotta look at your own shit and go, well, maybe that wasn't the right idea. Maybe that wasn't the best course. Even, but I do understand it, right? But it's a
Yeah.
mess, because again, no one's walking away from that happily, right? And that's unfortunate. Like, there's no clean solution there, and
There
I
is
don't.
no clean solution. And when you've got, you know, when you have terrorists using civilians as shields,
Yeah,
what are you going to do? You want to get your people back. I mean, it's just
it's yeah. There's a
so evil, and it's such a nightmare for everybody.
Yep.
Then you can't believe, I mean, what you're talking about trust, you have the terrorists telling you how many of their people have been killed. How are you going to believe those numbers? You can't believe
Yep.
anything. You can't believe the New York Times anymore, because they have out and out proven that they lied. And now BBC, there's a whole report that's come out that, oops, the BBC is apparently inherently anti Semitic, so we can't trust them anymore. So you can't trust anybody.
Right. It's a mess. Right,
Yeah.
right, and again, I don't. And by the way, and to be clear, I don't necessarily think that Israel's completely in the right either. I think there were other things that are going on that kind of created this situation to begin with, and honestly, the Israeli prime minister should be investigated for some of that shit.
He was supposed to have been arrested and in jail. What happened with that?
Yeah,
I
so
what
that's
happened? They were going to press charges last summer, and then that disappeared.
yeah. So I mean, like I said, and it's a mess. So I mean, did they? So who created the mess? All right, and that's an honest. It's not cut and dry, and that's the thing. That, like, nothing, nothing when it comes to geopolitics is clean. Doesn't matter what it is. There's no, there is. We don't live in a world, like, you notice when you write television is has this really, okay. There's a good guy. there's a bad guy. We can make the bad guy as interesting as we want to make them, but they're the bad guy, and you kind of deep down know it, right? Right? Even if you like him, right? You know he's not exactly a good person. It's much in real life. What makes it really shitty is sometimes there are no good guys. Sometimes you just look at it and just go, "Yikes!" Right?
Yeah, so to segue into our original reason for getting together. So my story is about what if there was no Roman Empire?
Yes.
That's really the bottom line. And, it's funny because, well, it was just like a month or two ago, there was that whole, that men think about the Roman
That
Empire
was
so
that was the
often.
weirdest thing.
I
I'm
know.
so that's so fucking weird.
I mean, I didn't get that, but I mean, the Roman Empire. First off, you have to remember that the Roman Empire was first a democratic republic
Mhm.
before it became an empire. Before Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon and took over and did what they attempted to do down here on January 6th.
Mhm.
Um, and it was a democratic republic. There was an attempt toward consensus. Women were actually treated with more, it wasn't great, but it was a lot better than it got once it became an empire. Once it became an empire and you had Caesar Augustus, Julius Caesar, and then Caesar Augustus, they they put women down as second class citizens. They got into people's bedrooms, you know, and then they just started consuming countries left and right. They took over large parts of Africa.
Mhm.
They're the ones who tore down the Second Temple in Israel in 68 AD and turned the property over to the Palestinians. Well, they weren't called the Palestinians there, but they were like, here, you can have it. We have to punish the Jews, so you can have it.
Mhm.
The Romans, I know the logic of the Roman philosophy and Roman education and all that, but they did more damage than good compared to who they were copying, which was the Greeks who came before them.
They didn't exactly copy the Greeks. They copied a lot from the Greeks, but they had their own approach.
Of
Um,
course.
they had their own approach, and I I think what's under so the two biggest benefits from the Roman Empire that I think would be very interesting to imagine with them not being there, the calendar, because yes, it's not the final version of the calendar,
That's a
but
good
people
point.
forget people forget Caesar was like Caesar Julius Caesar, brilliant dude, brilliant man.
Except
Uh,
he hated women.
yeah.
So I don't know how brilliant he was.
Well, how about we go to this point? He was smart enough to figure out how time, at least on some degree, worked,
Yeah,
and
but the
without.
Druids had that figured out too. And by the way, the Roman Empire committed genocide on the Druids. That's
Oh
when
no,
this
oh,
whole
no,
thing
no.
happened.
When we get deeper and deeper into it, yeah, they do. And I read a book about like empire building, and it was the whole idea of the need for power, and like power, and not like political power, but manpower, and that need to constantly feed your empire, or it starves. And that was and Rome. A lot of what Rome did was, I'm not justifying it, but a lot of what Rome did was for those purposes. But the other big thing that without the Roman Empire, roads. They built like the one thing that like they did do that was really impressive is a lot of the roadways in Europe exist because of them. It would be a very different world, like just the geography and everything how it worked.
Actually, I'm going to correct you. The
You correct
Roman
me.
roads, the whole science of it, the technology of the asphalt, the whole planning of it, all that was back in the Republic, not
Hmm.
in the Empire.
Yeah, fair
Okay.
enough.
So that was back when they had a democratic republic. You had consensus to a certain extent. That started in 300 BC.
Yeah.
So that
Oh,
was not an empire thing. You did not need to have the empire mindset of stomp on everybody else in order to have the Roman roads.
okay. So here's a question I would have for you. did the need to expand create the empire as we know it?
I think it's one. I mean, the reason why they went after Britain, for
Yeah,
instance, was agriculture.
yeah,
You know, and the reason why they almost were destroyed 400 years early is the woman that I'm writing about, which is Boudica, which, by the way, wasn't even her real name. Boudica means in Gaelic, it means victory. So nobody knows what her real name was, but they went after Britain for the same reason they went after Spain, the
yeah.
wheat, the grain, and all
The
that.
resources. Yeah,
And they overplayed their hand in Britain because they got pissed off when one of their client kings died over there, and everything was left to Boudica, the wife. They didn't like that, so they flogged her. They raped the two daughters, who were like 12 and 13, in front of everybody, and spit on everybody and said, "Tough shit, you're all gonna have to put up with it." And they walked away. And Boudica said, "I've had enough. Have you all had enough? Okay, we've all had enough. 250,000 of you by my count. Okay, let's go." And they went after him. The reason why Boudica failed at the end is because it became a religious fervor, because the Druids were in trouble with the Romans at the same time for overstepping their bounds. And so the Romans started exterminating the Druids. They traced the Druids all the way up to the northern tip of Wales
yeah.
and literally destroyed all of them. All of them. Okay. So the Druids, as they were fighting for their lives, fed the British, the Celts, the 250,000 troops. They really raised a fervor pitch to try to get them to fight back. So what happened is that these troops got out of Boudica's control, and because they started just destroying whole towns. They burned down London. They burned down what became known to be Colchester. They killed men, women, and children. They went nuts. But the Roman soldiers weren't there to defend those towns because they were out destroying the Druids.
Hmm.
So once they got that done, they turned around, came back, found Boudica, found those 250,000, used their more modernized technology, their warfare technology, and killed them. But that was the last battle. If they had lost that battle, the Romans were going to leave. There is correspondence that shows it was Nero was the emperor. Nero,
Okay,
playing the fiddle.
you asked me a question because I know of Hadrian's time going into Britain, right? I know Hadrian's time. I didn't. I haven't. I was like, okay, was this Hadrian you're talking about? Because that doesn't feel quite
No,
right.
it's
No,
Nero.
it's Nero. Okay,
And
yeah, makes
Nero
more
was a
sense.
crappy. I mean, Nero was very much a
Psycho.
he was a pleasure. He was a hedonist.
Yeah,
That was his whole thing. He was a hedonist, and I mean, he had a brilliant general,
hmm,
Suetonius, over there. But Suetonius could only be in one place at one time. But
yeah.
he handled it poorly too. Everybody, they all handled it so poorly, instead of trying to sit down. And because the Romans were already knee deep into a mindset due to Caesar, or Julius Caesar and Caesar Augustus, they were into a mindset that women should be secondary. Women should be their chattel, their slaves. We're not going to sit down and negotiate peace with a woman. So they were in that mindset. So anything went, and Suetonius was furious because he lost his whole Ninth Legion to to
Right.
Boudica's armies. So and we still see these kind of behaviors today. That's the crazy part in all of this,
Because it's because empires are the same no matter what era. Like,
Yeah,
they're the same. It's not. I don't really like. I think the need, like, again, empires, the biggest thing that an empire suffers from is, again, is power. Not political, but manpower, resources. You need these things to constantly feed the
The
way of life you
masses. Yep.
masses of the way of life you've cultivated,
Yep.
right? And so, I mean, we were very fortunate, like in our time, like whether we like it or hate it. I mean, oil was a big source of abundance for us for a very, very long time.
Yep.
Some of the issues we're having today is because it's not as abundant as it once was, right?
And some of it is because those who still have the oil do not want to grow and change.
No, but that's the nature of any tech. Like when we were going through slavery to the Industrial Revolution, people that didn't want to change. Again, it was about the same kind of thing. I have all this power. I'm rich and I'm wealthy. I don't want to change. We're kind of coming to another age where another change is needed. But like any other like every other point in history, and to some degree, it's human nature. Like let's be honest. If you're happy and you're comfortable in your home, and you're like, well, you gotta leave, you'd be like, fuck you. I'm happy here. And that on one hand, like that's the simplistic way of looking at it. It's not now. Grant you, it's a little bit of a bigger scale when you're what I'm talking about than what I'm saying. But that's the human nature element of that. And so there's always a fight at any point in history, I think. And it's both wonderful and scary at the same time that we're not different after thousands of years. In
Well, you
that,
see, it makes you wonder, like in the realm of the Star Trek universe, how did we over if that is something that's could happen, how did we overcome these things to be able to manifest that?
the answer, at least in part, the reason why Star Trek is in that universe is possible, is that you can create resources from thin air.
That's a
That's
very good point.
that's
Yeah,
part of
that's
it.
that would change everything.
Yeah, because at that point there wouldn't be a need to utilize the resources we have in the same way. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there wouldn't be some form. Again, the universe by its design has a little bit of entropy added to it. There would still be some, but it would be significantly less, right? And what you're looking at and what you're mining is a very different thing at that point. And with that pressure gone, you'd have the freedom to you'd have the freedom and the possibility to, you know, work on some other things. The Star Trek economy, as long as we have a finite amount of resources, the Star Trek economy is impossible.
I
Because
think
again,
you've
yeah,
really
you're
nailed it. No, I think
yeah,
you're absolutely right.
yeah, it's impossible. You have to have some form of give and take. But that doesn't necessarily mean now, here's the other thing. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to be in a world where one person devours someone else either. I think what that comes down to is, and this is kind of where we're at today, is when we have these people trying to devour everything, are we stopping them? Right? And if the answer is no,
Yeah.
I know that's a very bleak way to end the conversation. So we'll go with something happier before we wrap up. But I mean, that's it. Like it's not, and again, it's the nature of the world. There's only so much for everybody. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't better ways of doing it than how we've been doing it. What it means though is, ironically, a foil circle thing. Like I said, instead of worrying about the candidates we are choosing per se, what needs to be done is discussions like this with people. Hey, we only got so much of this. How do we do it in a way that that, if not perfectly benefits everybody,
But the
at
most
least gives,
equitable.
right? And that's it, right? And that is a discussion any of us can have at any time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like why I'm politically atheistic when it comes to candidates, but I'm politically passionate when it comes to issues. Because I find that
That's a
I
great way to put it.
yeah, because if I'm focusing on issues, I'm focusing on solutions. If I'm focusing on the candidate, look, okay, personally, I don't like Biden or Trump. I don't know, right? I don't have the same I don't necessarily know who the greater evil of the two of them is. They're both bad, but they're bad in different ways. That's my opinion. Now, that said, I don't think it matters. I think what really matters is, okay, what do you care about? What do you need? Let's talk about that. What do I need? Let's talk about that. Let's see if we can find a way to make that work between us.
Yeah.
Does that make, am I on something or am I on to something?
No, I think you're right. I think it's the whole problem we have right now is the inability to do this.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, though I will admit that I have gotten to a point where I am tired of the arguments. I am tired of people not making the effort to take the long view. And it's, for instance, our political system down here. Because of the way that the Constitution is written, it, at the end of the day, and this is not about whether it should be amended or not, because I do think it should. I think a
Yeah.
parliament system would be better. But that's not the reality. The reality is it's either going to be a Democrat or a Republican. So you take that and you look at that and you look at what has the Republican Party done for you? What has the Democratic Party done for you? And not just for you, but for everybody around you. How has the world benefited from each of these parties? And then, if you really truly do the research, I think the answer is pretty clear, but I'm not going to give it here because I don't want to piss people off.
It leads to it leads to a conflict. All right. The only thing I would add to that is I think you have to understand, this is from a candidacy perspective. You have to understand both candidates' histories. For example, if somebody worked for Trump, and I would not blame them for not wanting to vote for him because he's got a terrible history that way. If somebody had somebody in the prison system, I could see why they wouldn't want to vote for Biden because of his history there. That does play a role. Like, people do have to, again, people are going to look at what benefits them to some degree, and they should, because they're right. And that's the only thing I'm going to add to that. But yeah, folks, do your own research, and also, again, figure out and figure out, again, understand. I would go like this: understand both candidates' histories. Ignore the propaganda both ways. Look at the two candidates honestly of who they are and what they've done. Right. I'm not a fan of either of them, but again, it's because of my own research on both of them. But they both do certain things differently, right? And and some they each do things better than others in some ways, and some are worse in other ways. So you got to kind of make a decision there. And like I said, if you got to choose a candidate, choose that candidate. My secret hope this election is a third party. I would love an independent to come out.
But it won't. It can't happen. It has to be a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
It's an electoral college. It's not going to get changed in the next few months.
No,
so if wishes were fishes and if Santa Claus really existed, but he doesn't, let's be realists here.
Yeah, fair enough.
And this is the problem I'm having with people. And this is why I have an issue with anybody who doesn't go and vote.
Yeah.
Because
on that one, I'm going to respectfully disagree, but I understand where you're coming from. All right, and that's just because I think voting is about expression as it's about choosing your candidate. And there is something and I cannot fault someone for making it's like I don't like either of them. If that's your choice, I can understand that. I don't necessarily, again, to your point, electoral college is not going to change anything, but that's what you got your vote for. If you can't make a choice on what your vote is, then why are you voting? That's the only thing I'm going to say. I understand where you're coming from, though.
Yeah, I've gotten to a point where I'm tired of it. I'm tired of, I'm not going to convince anybody. Everybody is so convinced that they're right that there's much more interesting things we could be talking about.
Absolutely. Ninth rule. Remember what I said earlier? The ninth rule? Detach?
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. But so beyond the candidate stuff, like again, the real issue is keep open communication with each other, talk to each other about what we need, because those are the real issues. It's not, as much as, again, as much as the candidates can annoy us, it's not really about who the candidate is. It's really about what needs to be done. Um, and honestly, if we're busy fighting each other over the things like voting or who the candidate is and who the party is, we're never going to get to the real root of the issues, which is we have problems, poverty, poverty issues, your gun stuff, which is a really interesting mixed bag. The Constitution needing maybe some amendments, things that need to change, that have to change. If we're too busy fighting with each other with the candidates, we will never talk about the things that truly matter.
Yeah, because it's become a political football game.
Yeah, and that doesn't and football and honestly, and the key word in that is the game.
Yeah, I just want people to understand that you're not going to change the way the Constitution works between now and Election Day. It's
Oh no,
just
no,
not going to happen.
no, you're not. But what I do think that needs to happen, and this is talks like this with everybody, because it's like you're not going to get them to change the Constitution this election, but if we're like, hey, certain shit needs to change, and we all kind of band together on the things that need to change, they will change them. May not happen overnight, but they will change them.
Well, the problem is that the people who are in charge of getting to change it are not going to want to change it.
No, but this goes back now to the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where everybody was fighting for stuff. We're at that point. We're going to have to do that. I mean, again, not I so I remember this is a Canadian thing. I remember once upon a time, our teachers went on strike in high school, right? And the government ordered them to go back to work, and they went back to work. And it was like, well, what's the point of protesting if you can just be ordered to go back to work at any time?
We have that problem here.
Yeah. At some point, you got to stand up for yourself, and that means we're gonna have some battles ahead. But I also think that your generation, here's the thing about your generation I really admire. You're not afraid to lose.
I'm sorry, what?
You're not afraid to lose.
No, it's interesting because your generation is afraid to scrape your knee, and I can't figure out what we did wrong.
Okay, just for record, I'm not. I've gotten my ass kicked plenty of times, and I will get my ass kicked plenty more times before this life is done. I've owned it.
All right, but you know what? I've been a college professor to your generation, so I think I've had more exposure to your generation. And I'm telling you, a lot of them, it's even worse with Gen Z. They're even worse. They do not want to make a mistake, and yet they don't want to they don't want to try.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like your generation got this way in the 60s, again, because you fought for everything that really was important to you, and you weren't afraid to lose. Sometimes you did lose, but you weren't afraid to, and that's a life lesson, right? Look, I again, in pursuing a creative career, I've gotten my ass kicked plenty of times. I've starved. I've nearly been on the streets. I've been going through the up and down. I didn't quit, right? And the thing is, I learned in this life, like, if to truly get what you want in it, you got to be tough, and tough in a way that I'm going to take my lumps in this life. That's just life. Like, you're going to take your lumps. If you're afraid to lose what you have, you've already lost it. It's just now it's a degree of.
It's a good way to put it.
Well, no, you've already lost it. So it's a degree of pieces. Like, you might not lose it piecemeal, right? You might not lose it piecemeal, but you will lose it piece by piece by piece by piece. When I look at what's going on in the world today, especially in North America, the biggest thing I see is we've been so afraid to lose for so long. We've now are at the point where a lot of people are nearly have lost everything, and that's and a lot of people are okay with this. And I'm like, what the fuck, right? And again, I might be a little bit abnormal for my generation, but I have also gone for shit, and I've learned, and I've gotten my ass like. It's just the way it is. I've learned that I ain't walking away with anything I get in this life, so I might as well just go for everything I want. But that is not the attitude, especially that was not the attitude the Canadian education system tried to beat into me. I kind of fought the Canadian education system. I think I won that battle. That one I won. I didn't win all the battles, but I won that one. So I say it like that because what's going to happen in the next few years is going to force everybody to become tough again.
Yeah.
And it's going to force it. And because I think part of what happened too, you guys worked so hard for what you had that you made it, and this is going to sound very lame and lame, but there's a certain degree of you try to eliminate some of the same struggles you went through for your kids. It's a natural thing. You want your kids to have a better life than you. But sometimes those struggles built the character that made you you. Right? And
Yeah,
there's
but I would also argue that there's a lot of people of my generation who are not thinking about their children having a better life than them, and they're not doing the
sure.
things that need to be done for our children and our grandchildren to have a better life than them. And to qualify, I was born in the very last year of the baby boomers, so
Yeah.
I don't even consider myself a baby boomer.
So I'm scared to ask how. I don't want you to beat me. What year was that? Yeah.
I was born in 61.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
20-year generation, and the first half of it has a very different, the ones born in the 50s are very different than the ones born, 10 years
No, yeah,
later.
yeah,
Have
yeah,
a
yeah.
different
Because
mindset. I mean, I was a child watching a little girl run down the streets naked, screaming in pain in Vietnam because of, Agent
mhm,
Orange. Um, I was a little girl when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and I
yeah,
watched my parents cry, freaking out that how awful that was. When you're a child and you watch those things, it's like what happened to those to the millennials who, as children, were children when 9/11 happened.
mhm,
It so affects you, and you know, it, it has its mark.
sure. I think okay. The big difference is also too like the apex of in terms of wealth in American civilization was the early 50s, right? And right, that was the apex. And you were born when things you were still. I mean, things were overall still really good, but cracks in the armor were starting to show and
But they
processes.
weren't really good for half the for a lot of subgroups. Okay,
Yeah,
have I hit the glass ceiling incredibly hard in Los Angeles.
yeah,
Okay, happily, the next generations, it's been a little easier for, and a little easier for, and a little easier for, and I'm really happy for them. But I hit that glass ceiling so hard, I have scars. I had to sue somebody because I hit that glass ceiling so hard.
I believe it.
So that wasn't good.
No,
This
no,
whole "Make America Great" thing is it's PT Barnum. It's baloney.
so no, no, no. Not disputing that. But again, I'm strictly talking wealth, not all the. There were other things that came with it, right? And that just and everything has a price. And unfortunately, it sounds like you were one of those people that paid for it, and I'm sorry for that.
A lot of people paid for it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
oh,
my
absolutely.
dad was a Grammy Award winning record producer, classical music and spoken arts. And he, at one point, had to quit his job because his two black engineers were not getting equitable pay.
Yep. That
You
was
know,
going on. That
he
was
had the
going on.
wherewithal to see that that was
Not right.
just, he had to make a statement.
Hmm.
That
Yeah.
was the early 70s, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's about right. That's about right. My father was like I said, he's from Detroit. He grew up in he was one of the first white kids in those black neighborhoods. He was the ones that saw the tanks go through in the 60s. So
Wow.
yeah, oh yeah, no, no, no. Like he was there. Yeah, those houses back then were shit even then, right? So yeah, oh yeah, no, no, no. Like again, there's so that prosperity moment in the 50s has been paid. The other thing too is that prosperity moment has come with a price that has come from generation to generation to generation to generation,
Yeah.
right? And I don't blame anyone that was from that generation because again, they didn't know. They didn't. Like they just assumed that this would always be this way, and that wasn't the reality, right? That was what they were sold. And Because I look at with my grandmother and how she's retired and stuff like that. She's not, again, you don't realize until after you're done all this stuff that's like, oh, this is the price, this is the price, this is the price. It's the way it is. I'm not saying, again, that doesn't justify any struggles that have come along the way, but again, it's amazing what you see, experience, and what you're told, and then sometimes the consequences around you are you just can't see them.
Yeah, it's we're still cavemen.
We totally are.
And on that note, it's
And
been
then
great talking to you, but I do need to go.
no, it's been a wonderful chat. I was actually thinking about trying to wrap this up, but do you got something you want to promote besides the Kickstarter?
Um, Not at the moment. I mean, thank
Do
you,
you-
but no, not right now. I've got
no,
projects that are bubbling here and there, but nothing at a
okay.
point where I can announce it yet.
No, okay, that's fair. Do you have a place where people can contact you?
DianaBotsford.com.
Okay, give me 1 second here. By the way, I just want to say real quick before we wrap up, thanks very much for doing this. I hope
Yeah,
this
this
was
was
fun.
fun. This was
Yeah,
more fun than I thought it was gonna be.
we had a real conversation. That's
Yes,
why.
we did.
Yeah,
Yes, we did.
we
I am
did.
not your normal, and I know I'm not your normal older person either.
No, no, no. Diana, honestly, I'll say this, and then I'll just shut this down. Um, I would love to have you come on again
Great.
to talk about your history. You've had an amazing career. Like, honest to God, you've accomplished a lot. I'm not gonna say envious is the right word, but I admire the fact, like, it takes a very, especially in the industries you've been in, it's a tough business, and the fact that you've been in there and I don't know if thrive's quite the right word, but you've done very well, and you should be very proud of everything you've accomplished.
You're very sweet. I'm not,
Yeah,
because I'm one of those who's never satisfied,
that,
kind
but
of like
uh,
Hamilton, you know.
yeah, but I'm just gonna say it like this. I'm gonna enjoy it for you. You've done an
Thank you.
awful lot. You should be very proud of.
Thank you.
Honest.
Well,
All
thank you
right.
very much. Good
On that
luck
note,
with
ladies and
your podcast. I hope are you going to develop, do you have a website for your
yeah, yeah,
podcast?
yeah, absolutely. No. Like, we'll talk about it off the air, but yeah, I have a whole. I've done this is episode 1052. I've done a lot of these,
This
so
is good.
yeah,
Yeah, I think you could be a really good role model for teaching people how to talk with each other.
yeah. Well, thank you, thank
I
you.
think we need more of that right now. I am an enormous fan of the millennial generation, and not just because my daughter is of that generation, but also because like some of my writing partners are of that generation. And as a professor, I taught a huge amount of people in that generation. I just think it's the coolest generation, and I am so terribly worried for them.
We have access to more. Okay, I'm 1981, so I'm now at the very early millennial stage,
Yeah,
right?
you're 8 years older than my daughter.
Yeah. So really early. So the thing about our generation is we were the generation of transition because everything the digital age came in with us from the very beginning. I'm older than Google, and that's gonna be that is my generation's legacy, right? So, but the thing is, we have incredible knowledge, but we've also had to deal with the fact that the generation previous to us was incredibly damaged by what happened, of everything that happened to them,
The
and we
Gen
kind of had to
Xers.
Gen Xers, but also like 60s. Again, my dad. Look where my dad. I just briefly mentioned where my dad grew up. Like, he overcame a lot to, like, just put that in perspective, right? But there's also where my mom grew up, how she overcame. There's my like we were the generation with a lot of broken homes. We were the generation that watched the golden era disappear. The early path, and then the later half got to being inundated with this new technology. So we have the knowledge base and the skill base we have is incredible. But going back to something I said earlier, the big problem we have is we've been kind of the ones caught in the middle. like of all this stuff,
Yeah, but
right?
you have done some cool things
Oh no,
along
no,
the way.
we're
Like entrepreneur, bringing back the small business and the
yeah,
entrepreneurship. It's extraordinary because that's where innovation comes from.
absolutely. And
So I think that's huge.
yeah,
And I will tell you, I have had great joy collaborating with millennials. I find that they are incredibly generous and fair, and I trust them. It's just, I think very highly of the generation. I really do. I think it's very cool. Gen Z, I struggle with, but they got screwed with
well,
their pencils. So
but
they
also
really got screwed.
but also it's the gap, right? It's the gap. There's enough of a there. We gotta wrap this up, so I'm going to make this really quick. Gen Z, Gen Z, I can relate to Gen Z because I came up after them. The generation after them, I have no clue.
The
But that's me.
alphas, I think they're called alphas, right?
Yeah, whatever. I don't have a clue. But the thing is, I realize it's the gap. It's just there's a gap there. What I've come to accept, this is what I've come to accept. It makes it easier. I have not grown up in their circumstances. I didn't see it the way they saw
No,
it.
they got some screwed
No,
circumstances. They
absolutely.
lost they lost most of their high school experience, or they lost their high school graduation experience, or they lost their first year or two in college not getting to do the dorm experience. There's this whole like 3-year phase where everything was in this awful holding pattern and they didn't get to go through all those rites of passage, and it's not fair and it sucks.
Yeah,
And they didn't get taught well either, because you suddenly had all these teachers thrown online and having to teach online and not knowing how to teach online. But I will tell you, I reached out to our local high school because I've won national awards for online education. I know how you teach. I know how to teach online.
yeah,
I offered our local high school and our local elementary school, I said, this is who I am, this is what I do. Let me help you with teaching the teachers how to teach. No thanks. We know what we're doing.
yep.
Like, okay, I'm offering, I mean, I'm busy, but I'll be happy to help you. But no thanks. We don't want your help.
No, no, no. Okay, you and I could talk forever. We really, really could. I really,
But I
we
think we gotta go.
really, yeah, yeah. You gotta go. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Diana for coming onto the show and for being a good sport. So, for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. Take care of yourselves. I'll be back next week. I got some really cool guests then. All right.
One
Take
thing,
care. Hmm?
one thing. We're running a Kickstarter right now. We're looking for help to get it over the line. Just go to heritageanthology.com and it'll redirect to the Kickstarter.
All right. Hold on a
Get an
second here.
ebook, you get the book. I'm offering a masterclass in sourdough baking, or you could do a half hour with me for a little extra add-on. There's all sorts of things you can do in there. Or you can have your name be in one of the stories. You could be a character in one of the stories.
There you go, folks. All right. On that note, we will take off because Diana and I will probably find something else to talk about if I don't. So take care, everybody.